Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream. I am showing that it's 2 o'clock, so wanted to go ahead and get started. And if there are any um, initial questions, but I want to walk through a couple different things. Right now, I just want to test and make sure that everyone can hear me. Just let me know whether or not I'm coming through okay. I would appreciate it. If anyone can go ahead and hop on and just tell me in the chat, I appreciate. I'm showing everything okay on my end, but I just want to make sure that we're good to go in the chat for you all to be able to see what I've got going on here. All right, Ben. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, one thing I wanted to do on this live stream, and I think it's going to be really important today to have a conversation back and forth. So I do have some things planned and things that I wanted to cover as part of this, and we'll go through and I'll show you kind of what those are, and we can take those one at a time as well. But I wanted to have a conversation with us as a community as to this whole idea of what Supernote did with their desktop app and their mobile app and what those look like and kind of how that rollout happened. There were obviously some missteps. I think Rada did an excellent job of trying to recover from that. So we'll kind of debrief that and pull that down a little bit. As a matter of fact, let me share my screen real quick, or at least my demo screen, and I'll show you what we've got going on for this particular thing. So let's look really quick at my Supernote, and I have some of this outlined here. So what I planned that we would do today is talk about, and these are in reverse order, unfortunately. So let me go to the notebook. It'll be a little easier to read. So talk about the desktop rollout. I think that's going to be really important. Talk about the current functionality in the apps themselves and how those are working and what that might mean for the future. And then talk about future improvements. So, what are they going to do? What are they thinking about? I've had some internal conversations with Rada. As you all know, I'm not sponsored by them. They sent me the A6X2 for review. I do plan to get an A5X2 when it's available. I purchased the Supernote A5X back over 3 years ago now, and it's been my daily driver for all 3 years. But so there's no sponsorship here, but I do have a good relationship with the team because I ask a lot of questions. I'm a beta tester, and I've worked with them over those 3 years in trying to help make products better. And hopefully you've seen that not just with me, and I don't want to tout my own horn because I've been working with them. A whole bunch of people have been working with them to include functionalities, even like the to-do list, which was not on my radar, but that was something that came from the community, and it's really important that Rada keep engaging that community. And then what about the Supernote Cloud? One thing that I've had conversations with the team as well is around the Supernote Cloud. I think the desktop and mobile apps are well thought out. They mirror the device, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. And I'm curious about what they're doing with the cloud because that hasn't quite caught up yet. And I think that they're kind of putting it on the back burner as a sync function. And that may be, there may be some similarities with how Obsidian deals with their sync function. And that's just me speculating. I have no idea or inside information on what Rada is doing there, but I think that it's a possibility. And then at the end, time permitting, and I know that Kit Bets Masters has a live stream coming up at 3 o'clock Central Time. But if we have time, and even if we go over a little bit, and you all might want to go there a little late, there may be a rant. Matter of fact, I'm going to do the rant regardless because I would kind of like to have it on camera about the books Go 10.3 and this whole idea of comparing it to the Remarkable and the Supernote. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no issue comparing devices, But I think that some of the marketing and some of the conversation around the Go is marketing it as something it's not. And I get marketing is that way. But I'm taking a kind of a little bit out of Roderick, if you watched Rants on Tech, a little bit out of his playbook in talking about, you know, what these things are and what they are not. So anyway, that's the outline for the day. I expect us to have a conversation, so please drop questions in the chat. That would make me very, very happy. And as you all know, and I'll try and keep my arm out of frame next time I do that, if you watched the video I released last night, I'm using the Stream Deck for the first time to control the live stream today. And I used it last night or yesterday to record the video for the first time. And I got to tell you, I really like the functionality of this thing. It was a gift. I'm not sponsored in any way by Elgato, but it was a gift from my son, and it's been great so far. It helps me with scene switching. It helps me with kind of getting focusing more on setting up the camera angles and making all that work than having to constantly reach down here for my mouse and then look around and make sure that I'm clicking the right button. I just press one button and boom, we're there. So let me know what you think of that as well. Is this going better than the other live streams? Obviously, I've done two where Kit kind of ran the show. I've done three on my own now. This is number three. And I'd be curious whether you think it seems to be better, worse, and we can kind of go from there. So, any initial questions before we jump in and start talking about the first part of this? And again, chat's always open. I'm watching the live chat. I'll keep monitoring that. There are supers available, so if anybody is interested in doing a super, completely your choice, feel free to do so. There may be an ad break or two in this since I am monetized now, so just a warning that we may drop off for a minute and you'll see an ad. That's not something I control. It's an automatic process with the live stream. But just so you know kind of how this works. So Jeff has the first question, and I really wish, and maybe this is just me, I don't know how to make those questions go up the on the screen. So maybe if anybody has an idea of how to do that, you can tell me. But I'll read these for now. So Jeff asks, am I the only one that observes AutoSync trying to sync the device every couple of minutes when the screen is on, even if I'm doing nothing with the device? It's a huge battery drain, so I turned it off. And hey, Joe, no worries about joining late. We just kind of covered kind of the outline, and we'll get back to that. But Jeff, I think your question is right on. I've turned AutoSync off on all of my devices right now, and I think it's primarily because I use multiple devices, and I haven't seen the battery drain issue. It was other issues that were happening for me. So when it launched, you would have everything trying to sync all at once. So if you opened your device, it tried to auto sync right away. So if you opened your flip cover, automatically it was going to auto sync. Anytime you opened the web app or the desktop app, if you had auto sync enabled, it was going to try to auto sync. So everything was trying to communicate with the cloud at the exact same time. And when I reached out to RADA, they said, whoa, if you have more than one device, that's going to cause a problem. We suggest turning auto sync off on at least one device. It's not as big an issue on the desktop app and the mobile app, I think, because I don't tend to open all of those at the same time unless I'm demoing something. So for daily use, if you have auto sync on and you use one device, I think it should be okay. What I think the auto sync push from the device is, and this is just me as a layman and knowing how cloud services work from an educational perspective, but I think what's happening is every time you make a change and the device auto saves that change in a notebook or in a task or a to do or whatever it is. And it's important to note that the to do and the actual notebooks sync at different, they sync differently. You can enable auto sync for to do and not have it on for the for the files. So I think it's important to remember those two things. And once you do that, I think that kind of illuminates why this keeps happening or why this changes and why it's trying to sync. As you're making changes in those notebooks, it's trying to keep the files up to date on the cloud so that when you go then to the desktop app, it's a seamless experience. I'm not saying they've gotten there yet because obviously there's some kinks. My issue was the issue of you were having multiple conflict files and it wasn't syncing to the cloud, or it was syncing to the cloud and not down to the desktop app, or it was syncing to the device but not the cloud, not to the desktop app. So there were a lot of communication issues. I think the biggest thing now is if you keep the auto sync off and you manually sync, I've seen a lot less issues. Now, that doesn't mean in the future we don't want them to get that right. And I'm just a little hesitant to turn it back on because of what's happened. But at the same time, doing the manual sync, which I always liked on the Supernote device, to be honest, really worked well. So hopefully that answers the question. Again, I think reaching out to support anytime you have these issues is really important because there is nobody, I would argue, who is interested at supporting you as a user in this space than Supernote is, that Rada is. I mean, all of the issues that I was having were really, it was amazing. I put in a ticket, I heard back on the ticket, but I also put something in Reddit, and then Mulan reached out to me immediately. And all of a sudden, I was working on the back end through Reddit, through direct messaging, talking to them and the team about, hey, how do we fix this? What are the issues? Can you send us more screenshots? Here's a patch. And I mean, it was really amazing to see the level of engagement. They were not just working with on me, and I hadn't done a video on this, so it was just a user on Reddit making a comment, and I think that that was really helpful. So, great question. Any other questions before we jump in? All right. So let's go ahead and look at this first one. So I'm going to pop over here. Oh, I went to grab my mouse out of habit. So let's pop over to the demo mode. Quick, easy button push with my Stream Deck. Jeff, 100%, they are responsive. Um, yep, Joe, you only manually sync, including Obsidian. That's interesting. At some point, I'm going to make a video about a recent experience I had with Obsidian Sync, and maybe we'll do another one of these because I had an issue where a lot of files ended up deleted, but I could easily, okay, let me talk. I could easily go back and use Obsidian Sync's file history and was able to refresh and restore those, and it worked. But it was kind of a weird thing, and Obsidian doesn't even know exactly what happened. And at first they were saying, "Oh, you're using OneDrive." Well, no, but I store everything locally. But we don't want to go down that path today. That's for another time. So let's talk for a minute. And what you'll notice here is I'm kind of showing off the to-do functionality, which I think has gotten a little bit of, I don't want to say bad press, but has been, some people don't like it. Some reviewers have kind of taken it to task and said, this isn't what we want. Some of the Reddit community has said, we want this to be handwritten to-dos. Um, and I think all of those concerns are valid and all of those things are important. But at the same time, I actually like the way it works. And I think it works really well for my use. If I need to just do a to do in a meeting, in the moment, and then have where I can go back and tick that off. And I like the way they've implemented this. But another piece for later on. So let's talk about the rollout itself. And I think that, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, or you can ask again more questions in the chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as a community. I think they kind of rushed this. I think that there was a delay with the A5X2, which was a bummer to all of us. I think that the good thing about RADA is they're very contemplative. I can't say the word today. Anyway, they contemplate what they're trying to do. They think through the use cases, they think through their user base, and they try to not rush things to market. There was a delay with the A6X2 for the same reason. There was a delay in getting out some of these desktop apps initially. iOS and Mac didn't launch the same time as Android and Windows did. So I think they were really, in this position where they had been very purposeful in rolling things out at a pace that made sense from a user perspective. And then all of a sudden, they delayed the A5X2. They took a lot of heat from that in the community. Then books came out with the Go 10.3. And I think that kind of was a really smart move. And we'll get to this later when we talk about my possible rant. But I think books from a marketing and since they are already saturating the market with devices, from that business savvy perspective, were brilliant in launching the Go 10.3 when they did, because you had a lull. Remarkable has nothing new on the market. Big Me's directly competing with books, but they're not really going after that, that non-backlight form factor. They're going all in against the main series of book tabs. Supernote delayed the release of their newest tablet. In comes books and says, wow, we can like throw something in here. And I'm not saying they didn't have purposeful design behind it. I'm just saying that as a timing perspective, it was brilliant. And I'll stand behind that as a marketing piece. But I think that put pressure on Rada to release something and to throw something out there that they really wanted to have on the market. And they had done quite a bit of development on the uh, on the desktop app when it came to Windows and mobile, and they'd had it in beta for a while. And it really, I think that I think they just released it too early. I mean, they didn't beta test the Mac or iOS versions at all that I know of. Now, I could be wrong on that, but I remember they were very clear about putting the other two out there. Kid, it's great to see you, my friend. I'm looking forward to jumping back into your live stream after this one. So great to see you in the chat, and have really enjoyed the e-ink World Cups. I think those are Euro e-ink Euros. Sorry, I said that wrong. I think those have been great. But yeah, 100%. I think it was a timing thing. And I think it was sad in some ways for Rada because they did something they don't do, which is rush. And so I think that's a real problem for them. But they handled it well. And again, jump in, tell me if you think I'm wrong on this. Anybody in the chat. It's I think they handled it very well. They engaged Reddit, they engaged Facebook, they engaged their user base, their beta community. I don't know if they reached out to their iOS beta testers, whether they have a separated list for that. I would assume they do, but maybe not. And if they didn't, they probably should have, to kind of, pull back and say, okay, what do we do? How do we fix this? From the iOS and Mac side, because I heard all kinds of stories. I'm not a Mac user. I would be interested to hear what Brandon Boswell has to say on this if he tested out the Supernote apps on iOS and Mac to see what that issue was. But I think they went ahead, they threw it all out there, and they said, okay, let's do this. And then they had to do damage control. But I think they did well with that. I mean, it did take about 10 days in my case. I don't know if you all had the same experience. I'm going to flip back over to discussion real quick since we're not focusing on the device right now. And I think that, in my case, it took 10 days, and those were frustrating days. And I'll be honest, as a Supernote user and a longtime Supernote user, they were probably the most frustrating days I've ever had in the 3 years of owning the device. But at the same time, the fact that they were willing, with that huge time change, to be working with me when they should already be in bed, or when it was at 10 o'clock at night here in the US and I was doing something and I saw some strange behavior and I'd send off a message and they'd immediately reply through Reddit, that's pretty cool. And I think it's just, I think it's a testament to how they do business. So, Joe, 100% right. I think, I don't know, the A5X2, obviously, they've asked me to review it when it comes out, and I love my A5X. Uh, the dream for me has always been the A4. The A4X2 Slim, I think they're calling it, still on the books. I think would be a game changer. I've always wanted to try the Quaderno, even though I've heard mixed reviews on that. I know that, and we'll get to that later when we get to the rant. And Kit, I know you'll have to hop off at some point, but I'm going to do a rant later on the A5 or the Go 10.3 to Remarkable to Supernote comparisons. So if you can, come back and watch it. And for anybody else who drops off too. Um, so yeah, I think that, and let's go back here. So I think that's the rollout. Now, if there are any other questions, like I said, I don't have necessarily inside baseball, but I was uh, doing a lot of communication back and forth with Rada when it came to this rollout and specifically how things were presented. So just let me know your thoughts on that. Um, yeah, Kid, I agree. A4 is going to be amazing. I think it's going to be, if you take what the form factor for the Quaderno Gen 2 is, and then turn that over into the Supernote functionality, which to me, the Quaderno and the Supernote have always looked a lot alike, at least from the video demos I've seen. I think that that's going to be a game changer. So, all right, so we've gone through our first one, and it's funny because it puts them in the order. And I know I can move them around, but I just didn't feel like doing that. So, desktop rollout, we're done. Um, Gives me a real quick segue to say this is one of the things that both I and other people about the to do list would really like to see. This task is now done, but there's no way to know that in the associated notebook. The notebooks are linked, but there's no way to know now that this task is done. So you're being left with a manual process, which is okay. I mean, some people really get satisfaction out of doing that little tick mark. But at the same time, I think that they've obviously figured out a way to link the notebook and make that work. So it would be nice if they also figured out some way to show that it's been done in both places. That way you can work fluidly. Again, as an organization guy, productivity guy, having to do something in multiple places is never the best way to do it. You always want to minimize your flow or maximize your productivity, minimize the friction between you and what you're trying to get accomplished. So let's talk about current functionality. That actually kind of leads right into this. And again, please keep the comments and the questions coming. And, I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. Absolutely. So Joe said he uses the to do function for stuff he needs to get done the same day, particularly at work. And real quick, they're going to jump to an ad in about 30 seconds. So just letting you know that that's kind of cool. I've never had that happen before because I just monetized, but it's telling me when you're going to get an ad. So we'll try and time that accordingly. So the idea is that with this to do function is it's very good for me for same day tasks. I love to be able to enter something in as I'm in a meeting, get that into the to do list, and then immediately follow up that same day with all of the things that I've got going on. So here we go. We're going to step away for just a second for an ad. I'm not sure. I'm going to keep talking here for a minute because I think that there may be, I'm not sure whether it tells me we've come back for an ad or whether that's new. Max, no worries about joining late. We had just gotten through kind of the app rollout and how that worked. Thanks, Joe, for telling me about that. I didn't know whether to keep talking and it would put me back on. This is all new to me, so um, I think it's interesting. But thanks a lot, Joe, for letting me know that the ad break was over. Um, Max, thanks for joining. No worries about being late. We've talked through uh, different things. Um, and then let's see, new Nomad user. This is TTYLC. Really on the fence about the size. I understand that. I really do. I know some people will take this and they'll turn it into the landscape orientation, and they say that works just fine. But that's not always the case. And I think that it's really interesting. It depends on your use case. I don't think you can do justice to PDFs here. I really don't. I know some people can. And if you have really good eyesight, if you're a lot younger than me, that might work perfectly fine. On this side, I think that if you can make this work, whether it's trimming or different ways to make the margins bigger. You can really do that. I grade papers on here. I do all kinds of things with it. The A4 is going to be the big one for if that's your use case. If you're reading an ebook, this smaller size is fabulous. Excellent for Kindle, Kobo, and EPUBs. It does a great job. Still prefer this one a little bit at the larger size, but it's not necessary, and this one is far more portable. So back to what we were talking about on kind of current functionality the different with the apps. So give me just a second. I do have to use my mouse for this because my current screen over on the other side here doesn't have the right things on it. And so I've got to configure that so that you'll be able to see kind of where we're at. And I was going to show my phone, but I might not. I might just stick with the apps themselves. So currently, and what I pulled up here is the Supernote desktop app and the Supernote cloud app. And of course, you'll see right here the to-do function already took off that first conversation that we had. Well, actually, it didn't because again, I mentioned earlier, I've gone to the manual sync option. And what it will do is when I do sync this, it'll take that off. We'll click it off of here for now. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about current functionality is this idea that you have a really interesting cross-platform uh, product because the little notebook icon here will take you to that same notebook that you had that we were showing on the device. It's really neat. And now it takes you to the notebook, not to the page. Right now, it's all on one page. So it's going to take you to that page because it's first page of the notebook. But it won't take you directly to where the task is. So it's not linked, even though it's started from the task, it's not linked to the task. One thing that a lot of people have mentioned about functionality for this, which I think is really interesting, is that links throughout your documents are not persistent. And that's a little bit of a worrisome thing. So I did a video on this, and I may put that down in the description afterwards on the idea that you could create an oral exam template to be able to basically take notes on individual people who are having a group discussion and then link to their documents that they submitted beforehand. And you could have all that information linked from a central hub. And I did that, and it worked really well this last semester that I taught. But what it didn't do is now they've made it so easy to move around documents with this desktop app and then it also being downloaded local data that it broke all of those links. So those links aren't relational. It doesn't work like Google Drive does. And I think that that is going to be something moving forward that they've got to address. And I think they're working towards that. However, in here, and I can't show this live, but I noticed it the other day. I moved a bunch of things around and then I went to the to do app and I went ahead and clicked on the notebook. And even though I had moved those files, it came up with a box, said searching, and it found that to do page that it was originally linked to. So I think they have persistent links in this particular app. And it may just be a programming issue. Again, not a programmer, don't want to be, um, you know, don't want to be that guy who's telling programmers how to do their jobs. I'm an educational technology guy. I'm a designer by trade, and that's what I do. And I'm a teacher. So a lot of these things I say are, here's what I'd like to see, but I don't really know how to get from A to Z. And I think that's where the programmers at Supernote are really working hard on this. Stasia said wish list for the to do app is subtasks, creating tasks from PDFs. Yeah, I think that is again something that I think they rushed the to do app a little bit in that same vein when they were rushing the desktop out because they were again linked. I think they probably could have taken a little bit more time to do the beta testing on it and run it through the beta community and really kind of maximize that functionality, but 100%, I think they're working on all of those things. Um, yeah, Joe, and Joe said, get a lot of questions about the Supernote from iPad users. It's funny. I agree. I mean, I think the iPad is fabulous. And if you ever watch Mark Kelly from the Spark, he uses his iPad for everything. So it's his main computer. And he went on a rant about, and now we've got this idea of rants coming. I know Kit's done one, and of course, Rants on Tech does them. But Mark did one on how can you say the iPad's not a computer? You can say it doesn't run Mac OS, but you can't say the thing's not a computer because he does all of his video recording, his editing, all of his productivity stuff on there. And I think that it's really important to understand that how we think of computers now is amazing compared to what computers were. Excuse me, I have to take a quick drink of tea here. Compared to what compared to what computers were 10, 15, or even 20 years ago, they're totally different and they've changed so much. And but I get a lot of comments from iPad users too. One thing is they don't like the feel of writing on an iPad. They don't like that everything's on the iPad. And, I get a lot of comments asking me, oh, is that a remarkable? No. And then I have to explain to them that difference too, which is funny. But I get that confusion more so than if they're confused of the functionality versus an iPad. And I think it's just we've been so inundated with Android tablets and everything else that it's confusing in the marketplace right now. Um, So, Max, you're saying Supernote does search for broken links between notebooks? I'd like to hear more about that because I've gone to several of my notebooks just the last couple of days because um, I've had people asking me this question and I haven't been able to get those to reestablish. Now it could be because I'm making all of those moves not on the device, but in Windows Explorer, which is then syncing up through the roaming data to the main back through the cloud, then to the device and to the app. So I wonder, and that may be a good place for Rada to start this conversation around. I wonder if it's because of the fact that I use this in a different way that's why that happens. And and maybe it's because I've been thinking a lot about Obsidian and that use case as well. So yeah, Max, thanks for that. Maybe if you move it on the device itself, those links are persistent, and then you have to make sure then when you sync, then it would persist all the way through the ecosystem. But I don't know for sure. So thanks for throwing that in there. Um, Joe, what was different on the beta? Do you mean for the desktop app or for? I think the biggest thing was we were still working out and tell me if I get the wrong, um, if I'm getting this wrong here. Um, Oh, on to do. I think it was just that we were still in the business, or not in the business, we were still involved with them in testing the beta. So we were raising a lot of these questions and kind of giving these suggestions through the beta. And I think something like, the link back and forth between the actual text that you see here or sorry, that you, let me go back here. So the actual handwritten text here and the to do app, making that so that when you ticked off one, it ticked off the other. Um, the beta app in general were those persistent links. Um, and Joe, the links do carry through exported PDFs as far as external links. Internal to that document, they didn't used to. I think they may have fixed that. That's something I'll have to look into. But I don't think if you go from notebook to another notebook page, that's going to link. Now, it will within the app here. Those links will carry as long as you're in the app. Again, I think the biggest thing that they have to do functionality wise is figure out how they want this to work as a whole and how they want it to make that connection. So as a matter of fact, let's go here and one thing I do want to talk about before we leave this page, and these are great questions, and I know you're getting me on a little bit of a tangent here and there, and that's good. But one thing I do want to talk about is the complete lack of a to-do interface on the cloud. And I've talked with Supernote about this, and I think that they're prioritizing the desktop experience and the mobile experience, and they're using the background, and we'll talk more about that with future, that I think they're going to eventually mirror the cloud experience. I have another theory that they may have it act like Obsidian Sync in the background, and that's basically what it becomes, is just a way to shuffle files around. But again, not 100% sure on that. Let's see. Kit said, agreed, should do that. Make a little tick box appear in the original notebook. That would be sweet. You're right. It should be watertight that links persist. Yeah, absolutely, Kit. I think that my workaround here of showing you build a task list and then write it is clunky at best. It does give you a central way to navigate that, but it's also um, it's a workaround, and workarounds are what they are. And I think that's where we kind of are sitting. Uh, so this doesn't have the to do feature. It also, when you go into things, it doesn't put them in the right orders that like how you've done it in your other piece. I mean, this one happens to be, but in most of it, or actually it doesn't. So you'll see books, financial, yeah, it does. Okay. But if I were to number these, like for example, if I go back to Note, when I first opened this, it was in this format, or it may be in update by time or size. There's no rhyme or reason. It doesn't remember what I've set in the past. And that's a small thing, I know, but it's something that I think they need to work on. But let's go in here and I want to show you the testing environment and we'll look at hop over and see. Give me just a second, folks. This is an unplanned because I was asked about this specifically. I may not be able to find it. Yeah, it looks like I may have gotten rid of those particular notes. So what I had done, and I had in here uh, basically a test note. I was going to show you, but I can't do this right now because I don't have uh, non-personal data. I do have the exams that I actually graded for my students, but I can't show those on the screen. But all of the notebook links that I'd added into the top of that were broken. So it would say file not found whenever I went to click on it, whether it was on the device or whether it was on the screen itself. So here I've got all of those up. And no matter how I did that, it wasn't working correctly. And that's why I said those links were broken. So again, sorry about that, not being able to show that in real time, but that's one of the joys of the live stream. Um, So Joe says Vlad Campos has done some vids on Supernote plugin for Obsidian. Okay, huh? That's interesting. Um, as far as whether or not the links persist going into Obsidian in the PDF. Again, I think that it depends on whether they're external or internal notebook links. So I'll have to test that, Joe, and let you know um, why that is and whether that works or not. Because I'm a heavy user of both Obsidian and Supernote now, and I think that's important. Anoop, 100% thanks to Kit for jumping in before his own live stream. I know how stressful it is getting ready for a live stream. So, uh, it's one of those things where you're constantly, well, like what I just tried to show, uh, trying to think of worst case scenario and hoping that that doesn't happen. But I appreciate it. And Kit has been highly supportive anyway of all creators. And I've appreciated his mentorship as I've kind of started this as a hobby and went forward. Um, yeah, Joe, again, PKM, and we may need to do another live stream on that. Uh, Max says it's internal links make it to the PDF, not external. Um, and Kit, yeah, thank you. You have a lot less in gaffes than I do think. I think sometimes, but and you handle it with a lot more grace. Um, Joe, referring to internal links. Noob, thanks. Oh, thanks for that, Kit. That's great. I appreciate it. And again, appreciate the support. So again, for the functionality, and one thing I do like, and I do want to show something really cool that I just found out, and this is a current functionality. So I just recently did a blog post, and as you know, I tend to write my blogs on this and then try to take the handwriting conversion into the next level, but or into Word, clean it up, and then take it out into Blogger. But what's really neat here, and I just did this blog, and shameless plug, if you haven't read my blog on open educational resources and free resources, please do so. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, and I'm a big proponent of things like Project Gutenberg. And let me go ahead and get back over to the screen share for this. Project Gutenberg, and there's just so much out there. Merlot on the educational side, a lot of different things that you can do. Uh, your public libraries are phenomenal resources. I mentioned in the blog, I pay $51 a year to be able to use a public library all year long. So you can't even begin to replicate that in the private sector. So really a good service. But here's that blog and how it started. And you'll notice I used cursive. Sometimes I write in cursive, sometimes I print. And the Supernote's handwriting recognition is very good. There wasn't a lot of cleanup here. But let me show you something really interesting. So now when you go to export, you can say, for example, I want to do this as text. I didn't export it from the app because it doesn't give me that docx version. I did it from the Supernote itself, which I don't know why the docx is in here. But when I go to do it, it lets me pick wherever I want to send it. That's been a feature that people have been asking for a long time. So this idea that not only do you have the potential of being able to export, which has been, always going to that export folder, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. But then you had to go to a separate place. So ideally, from here, if I was working in a PDF as part of my original note, or if I had those linked, I could export the PDF with the markup file directly into a program like Obsidian. So, or I could export it into Google Drive or OneDrive or wherever I wanted to send it, put it on my desktop for some reason. That is huge. And you can't do that from the device. So I think once they add docx here as an actual possibility, I think that'll be a game changer for how you can kind of engage with this material, because it really is, it's huge. But the idea of just being able to move the PDF not as two separate files into into a specific directory is a big win. So that combining of the files is pretty cool. The search for recognized text, I haven't really. It does. So thanks for bringing that up, Max. It does have search for handwriting on the desktop app. I thought it might because it had this idea of um, when we went to that export. And let's pop in here real quick and show you. So let's go back to open source again. And it does ask for the recognition language. So, oh, Max, no worries. They're changing it all the time. Quite frankly, some of this, I thought it might have it, but I hadn't used it yet. So, again, there's nothing here that you can, you know, the nice thing about Supernote is they're constantly innovating. The frustrating thing about Supernote is they're constantly innovating. I think that's with any app or any technology as well. Um, Joe, absolutely. I think Supernote OCR is way better than Rocketbook. And I don't dislike the Rocketbook. I actually like it. I like their beacons that you put on a whiteboard. And I think that's really fun to use. Um, yeah, yes and no, Joe. So this is a great question if anybody's not seen this yet. Joe said, do you have to make use of the Supernote Cloud to really take advantage of the app? The answer is no. But you'll have the best experience if you do. And I know there's been, and this is kind of a mini rant, and I apologize. There's been a lot of eh, discussion about privacy and security with these devices, and people talking about them being from Chinese companies. My device or my information is hosted on a US Amazon Web Services server. That's where my information is. Now, I'm not saying there's no way in the world they can access that information, but it's not going to another country's server if you're concerned about that. And you'll see I reposted something in the community that Kit had posted in his community about this testing that was done on a Books device and how it pinged and where it sent information to and what kind of packets. Far more intricate than what I would do and even understand. But I think that it's important to think through that. So, Joe, to answer your question more directly, though, if you have the Supernote Partner app installed and you go to open any Supernote file, whether that's on OneDrive or Google or your desktop or wherever it may be, it'll open that file. Now, what you lose there is the interconnectivity. So it's not going to then allow you to link around between the notebooks or have the functionality that you're going to have as a direct pair with the device. Not 100% sure how that would work if you did that with the direct integration with OneDrive or Google Drive or um, Dropbox, but I do think that it would cause some friction. But even being able to open those files and view them now natively is a huge advance to where Supernote was, and it's something I've been wanting to see for a long time. So, current functionality, are there any other questions about what it can do, what it is? Again, I think they really need to take some time and develop the Supernote Cloud. I think that's important because it needs to mirror. The desktop app or the mobile app looks exactly like this, except for one big thing that everyone has recently noticed, and this popped up on Reddit just the other day. But you can no longer import through the desktop app on Android. And I'm not sure why that's gone. You can still add a new folder, you can still search, you can still open, navigate, you can do all of those different things through the app. Um, but it's not, I don't know why you can't add something either. So, um, just a shout out to Supernote. I don't know why that function was there. Now it's gone. Could be a coding thing or a programming thing, but it would be nice if you could let us know as a community kind of what's going on there. Um, oh, Curly, no problem. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. This is a lot of fun for me. I mean, my family, they kind of joke with me. They actually left this time to go to Target and do some other things, but a lot of times they're out here in my front yard and they're giving me a little bit of grief, or they're like trying to make faces at me to throw me off track. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy these kinds of conversations. Um, let's see, Max, partner app. I don't know what you mean there, Max, on the TOS for the partner app are outdated or dated 2019, not really applying for you. Oh, terms of service. Okay. It took me a minute. Sorry about that. Former Star, or not former, kind of a Star Trek nerd, so I thought the original series. So, had a minute uh, to process that. Um, I don't know. The partner app's a little bit interesting. So if you download it from the direct link through the Google Store, then or through the App Store, it's a little different than if you download it directly from RADA. And I think that that's where there's some confusion. Downloading it directly from RADA, it's a more robust app. It includes To Do, it includes all that other stuff. I'm not sure that the Play version has ever been updated. Um, Stasia, I'll drop the link to that blog in the description after the live stream. If you don't mind, I don't want to throw off all of my screens right now, but absolutely, I'll do that. Um, yeah, so yeah, Jeff, original series, TNG, all that stuff. And a huge Star Wars fan too. But again, those are kind of behind the scenes things on me a little bit. Um, so that's again kind of any other questions on the app. I think once they get the cloud app to either be mirroring, or again, I think there's a real opportunity here for them to go the Obsidian Sync route and just keep a history log in the background, and you just use the desktop app, which automatically syncs between there. And that's how Obsidian Sync works, and it's really awesome. Um, yeah, no worries, Stasha. And by the way, it does have, just so you're aware, my blog's also linked to my profile. So I'll try and remember to put that, or I'll definitely remember to put that direct link in. But if you want to see the entire blog, you can find it there. So let's go back to the to-dos here. We've talked about current, we've talked about some future possibilities. See, we're getting things ticked off. This is productivity in motion. Um, And we've started to talk about the Supernote cloud. So let me expand on that really quickly, um, just because I want to take a minute to give it its due. If you create something in the Supernote cloud, it does filter really well to the other components. That was not the case during that 10-day issue that we had. There were things I was syncing in the Supernote cloud, and I eventually went to only working in the Supernote cloud so that I could keep the communication between it and my device, because the desktop app just quit working, quit syncing altogether. It was hanging up all the time. It wasn't um, matching the structures. It was really having trouble. And so I went to doing all of this together. And I think that, again, it might be part of that rush is that the fact that these interfaces don't look the same, and this is just me being a guy who works a lot with relational databases, not at the coding level, but at the user interface level, that your fields have to match. Your fields have to match, and they have to have the correct relationship set up and created in order for them to communicate properly. And I think that the more you're trying to match something to a system that doesn't have that direct relationship or that direct comparable, the more opportunities there are for there to be issues. That's just my hot take on it. So take it for what you will, but I think it's really important, and I think it's something um, that hopefully they'll address. Jeff, Android, or wait, Max, sorry, yours first. Did Rada say anything about including the micro SD card? They did not. That I think there has been a Reddit thread if you search where they talk about that. Um, but I'm not sure. And I think partially that's maybe it's a holdover between them not having been able to release the A5X2 yet. Again, I don't know that that's an issue. I don't know it's something that they'll be able to that would hold anything up. But at the same time, I think that to your point, you would want that, right? Uh, but then again, do you want that? I don't know. I mean, I've found the SD card is a nice kind of extra thing. I throw a bunch of extra library books and EPUBs and things on my Nomad so that if I ever want to go in there, I can read. But it's got a lot of storage on device. And I'm not sure that I would ever actually use the 2 terabytes I have stuck in there. I might. I could be wrong, but to me, I don't know. So yeah, I would suggest reaching out on Reddit if you can't find that thread and just asking them, what about this? Is this something um, that is in the works? I don't know if there's some kind of extra issue with that since it's not part of the root directory and that's currently what they sync. But great question. Jeff, Android app on Play Store is pretty current now. Oh, okay. So they have updated it. Thank you for that. I hadn't looked at it in quite a while. I've been downloading it directly from them. And so I wanted to make sure before I spoke to that, um, because I know there for a while it was pretty outdated. And the nice thing about all of these apps is you can check for updates within the app. So if you go to the settings tab here, and you can do your device linking, but you can also go right to the check for updates, and it will tell you whether or not you have the current version. So you don't have to, even in the desktop version, or even in the Android version, you don't have to go to the App Store to update it. You can manually do that from within the app. Some of yours is being cut off there, Joe, because you're the bottom one and there's the heart icon. It's not letting me see you. It says I may need to go ahead and go on. Get an Obsidian Sync plan just to see what it's like. It's very cost effective. If you're an educator, it's even less effect or less costly. It's about half of what the annual subscription is. Um, you can also, I think their lowest plan now, they went to multiple tiers depending on how much information you have. And I did this during the Obsidian video, but you can get it for as little as $4 a month. And then you can pay annually. And I think maybe even knock that down a little bit. Um, it's really a good tool, and it excels at what it does. You don't actually log in and look at it in Obsidian anywhere. It just shuffles your data around. And I personally keep it on OneDrive and um, keep it as all my files on device, which gives me that double security of having it backed up. And you can do that with Google too by having it as through the Google app. That is one thing. It brings me to one other thing I want to talk about really quick. And I think that this is where you get interesting. So, and I'm showing this with Google or with Obsidian over here on the right and Supernote on the left. And this will be the last thing that I kind of talk about for this particular component. But so um, this is really cool to me, this potential. Being able to access my files now natively in Internet Explorer, not Internet, in Windows Explorer is really awesome. I went through and did a ton of cleanup between my Obsidian vault, and of course, I can't show that here necessarily because this was in real time with my work data. But I started mirroring my file structure between the Supernote and Obsidian so that as I'm adding notes down the line, I can look in a particular file and then just drop and drag. And the plugin, whether you pull it in through Obsidian or whether you pull it in through Windows Explorer, does its magic in the background. So I could find a note here in the personal side and I could pull that over into Obsidian, and let's see if we can do this here. So let's go back to my blog. Let's go to my test, or let's go to see. Let's go to my open resources file. We'll pull it into the root just so you can see that. Now we'll go to Obsidian, and don't worry, we're not going to stay on Obsidian forever. But I just wanted to point this out since somebody had asked. And now that note is there, and not only is it there, but it's already converted it. So here's where I can attach a markdown file to the vault. I can do the images and the markdown files and then process those accordingly. Or I can just navigate this. And it has already converted the text. So it's pretty cool. The functionality of this is one of my favorite things. And it's one reason I like the way Obsidian handles things, but also I love this direction that Supernote is going in if they go this Obsidian route. The idea of being able to have all of these files be able to be manipulated in a much quicker way than either through the desktop app, which is drop and drag, or through the mobile app or the cloud or on device even, to be able to manage it this way and move things around and reorganize and rename and do all of that and then just hit sync and pop, that goes back to my cloud, to my devices, and to my apps. That's amazing. There's no other way to say it. It's amazing. uh, it's not there yet. It's getting there. As I told you, in my personal case, it broke some links. It'd be interesting to see if that's happened to everyone. I know there have been some others, people report that, but I think it's very interesting. Um, let's see, Android app, Max. You said, do you know how to disable the Supernote Cloud? Well, I think, Max, to be honest with you, I think that if you don't hit auto sync on this, and it may be a good thing if you can find that video, and I do not have his name in front of me, but the kit had highlighted that did the security discussion around books. I'm pretty sure that if you just download the desktop app and set it not to sync, and then on your device, choose another sync method or no sync method whatsoever, uh, I don't think you automatically send to the cloud. Now, I could be wrong on that, but I think that that's just the case. You could also do OTG, so you could use an external drive, or you could just connect to your computer directly and download the Supernote desktop app and use that as kind of a viewer for being able to view all of these things, note files, and different things of that nature. Those are just some possible workarounds. Again, I don't think that I get the issue about security and concerns. I do, and I don't think that's necessarily. I think unfortunately it's been tied to this being a Chinese-based company, and I don't think that's fair. I think you have every bit as much concern around, although I'm a heavy Microsoft user and I pay for their services and I think the world of them, but there's a reason that Apple puts so much emphasis on how they deal with AI and keeping their silicon network separate from ChatGPT and then having a special agreement with them about Apple users' data. There's a reason that they do all of that. I think Google, not Google, Google and Microsoft and pretty much anybody who's cloud based, I really believe that you have to have that as a concern. Anytime you put your information out there, I think it's important to think about the security concerns and the privacy concerns. And as someone who's in the public space a lot, again, I get it, I understand, but at the same time, I think some of the benefits can outweigh, and there are ways to lock things down. I mean, you can lock down and do passwords and PIN codes at the folder and file level in Supernote. Again, this is a testament to the Supernote community. There was a bypass. There was a way to get around that originally. There was a hole, a gap in how that security worked. And if you opened in a specific sequence, you could bypass the folder security. The minute that Rada was told about that, that was fixed through a patch. So again, I think it's communication. I think it's what you as a user are willing to um, participate in or willing to allow to be out there. And that's a personal decision. It's not one I can really give advice on. It's about your threshold and your tolerance for that type of thing. It's I don't know, Max. You might want to reach out to Supernote Cloud support on that, um, and just ask the question. I know that you have to sign up for a Supernote account in order to. Well, actually, I don't think you do. You do to use any of the online services. You have to sign up for a Supernote account, but I'm not sure that you have to sign up for the cloud. But I could be wrong. And again, it's been so long. I've had these for 3 years, and I've had my Supernote account, and it's just not something that I'm as concerned with because I've already signed up for my account and I use the Supernote cloud extensively. And I really don't want to use OneDrive, although originally I did, but I don't find it as useful as I thought I would. And the same with Google Drive. I keep a backup, but I don't tend to use that as my primary. But great questions. All right, it's 3:05. We have actually done very well. Let me get back here to what about the Supernote cloud? I think that we've done very well at staying on task and still being able to get all of these things done. Let me get, I want to go back to the discussion screen for a minute, which is the push button now. So let's go on a quick rant. And for those of you who know me, you know I don't do a lot of rants. I think that Roderick does a great job with this. I think that Kit tried to do a rant and he joked about it was a rant, and he was so soft spoken and so articulate that yes, it was. But again, uh, and with Roderick, he's just smooth. I mean, the way he does his rants, it's almost like you don't even know you're being ranted at in some ways. And he's just great. So if you haven't checked out Rants on Tech, please do so. I'll put him down in the description. He's on my list of people I follow. It's well worth talking about. So let me and we'll talk about. I'll set this up in the background while we're talking through this. Um, but I want to talk about the Go 10.3 inch. So let me type that in and just have it ready to go here. And then we'll talk about this. And actually, bear me with me just a second. Okay, so, and let's find that, and then I'll pop it up here in just a minute. So let's talk about the books Go 10.3 versus Remarkable versus Supernote. Now, I kind of led off the live stream today talking about the fact that I think Books was extremely smart and savvy in the way that they approached this as a marketing item. And I 100% agree with that. I think that they released it at the right time, at an excellent price point, and with some slick marketing around it. Very smart in the way they did that. But what they didn't do is position it as a really um, direct competitor in a substantive way. And this goes back to something that's been stewing with me for a while. Um, you know, Kit, Voya, My Deep Guide, Brandon, Boswell. Um, I'll say good reader, even though I don't think they are. I think they have a very specific bias towards certain things. But everybody is now putting out content about, is this the remarkable killer? Is this, and don't get me wrong, I don't think the Kit's doing that. I don't think that Boy is doing that. But they're all asking that question. And I think what they're saying in substance is that this is basically Books's idea of the same or similar experience if you ignore that it's the Book's device. Now that's my take. So my rant here is that the direct head-to-head comparison for use case shouldn't really exist. What should exist is this books device right for you or better for you inside the books ecosystem? Because whether or not you believe that you want a Supernote or you want a Remarkable, that is a specific technology and type of technology footprint for that type of device. You aren't wanting to have full Android like me. I chose the Supernote because I didn't want to go as minimalistic as the Remarkable. I didn't want to go as full on Android as the books. So I went with Supernote because it gave me a good balance. It let me do things I wanted to do without as much friction of having to figure out what and how to turn everything off. And that's what's getting lost in this debate and this conversation that everybody's having. And I'd be interested on your thoughts in the chat and also your questions. And if you think anyone who's not on the live stream now and might want to hear this part of it explicitly, feel free feel free to share this out on your social media, and we can maybe get some more people to jump in here at the end. But seriously, I don't think the comparison makes a lot of sense to me. And the reason it doesn't is because you don't buy a books device if you want a Remarkable. And you don't buy a books device if you want a Supernote. They're different enough to where they just have different functionalities and ways of engaging. Um, One thing I really enjoy, and I love watching Voya's videos, and I watch all of them, even though I don't use my meeting planner and my daily organizer, which are great products, by the way. I still watch his descriptions of them because I'm interested in how his mind thinks. And the first thing he did when he went to review the Go 10.3 was to turn everything off. He turned off notifications. He put on Do Not Disturb. He did all of the things that make a books tablet or a books device a books device. He turned off. So my question then is, why would you buy a books device only to turn it into a Remarkable? Now, price point, I'll give you, could be one possibility. But when they have turned off those features, and I've seen the head-to-head comparisons between those two devices, I think Remarkable still wins for writing feel, for ease of use. And even though you've turned off all of the distraction, which that's a whole nother rant for another time about um, distraction free being a catchphrase or being something that isn't a realistic thing. I think there are times for focus, and I think focus is very important. And Remarkable and Supernote both allow you to do that in a very unobtrusive way. And Joe, to your point, 100%. I think I expected it to be a device that had less distractions when I bought the Supernote. But why would you buy the Go just to turn everything off? That's my question. And I think that it may come down to price. And if that's the issue, I mean, Books was smart. They built something that's cheaper. Now it's not all made out of aluminum. I actually like that. I like the Supernote because it is plastic and it's more durable. But at the same time, I think it's really interesting to have this conversation. So my rant isn't that you shouldn't compare devices. I think you definitely should. I mean, I learned what device I needed by listening to Kit and Voya and Brandon, and I said, okay, this is really important. But and if you haven't yet, watch Jeffrey Moss's video series on the books 10.3 Go. He had to do 4 videos just to cover a fraction of what the thing is capable of. Now, again, if that's the device you want, it is a phenomenal device that gives you all kinds of different potential uses if that's what you want. But if you want all of that and you don't have eye strain issues or you don't have a need for e-ink, my argument would be that you're basically looking at what you really want is an iPad or a Samsung tablet. And if that's the case, then go with one of those because you'll be able to watch video. You'll be able to really look at websites without having to worry about BSR technology or uh, all these super refreshed things that Books is trying to do to, in my estimation, fit a square peg in a round hole. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, this is no shade on Books. I think they're pushing the envelope on what e-ink can do in a lot of ways. I really do. And I'm thankful for that because I think it's improving all devices. But, and yeah, Joe, I mean, 100% right. I have those devices. I mean, I don't have another tablet because I just don't have the use. I tend to use my computer, I tend to use my phone, and I tend to use my other screens. But I can see someone having a tablet, having a phone, and having a computer, and still wanting a Supernote. And I think that's, really, it's interesting to me. And I don't know why it irritated me a little bit to see all of these different comparisons being made, and it's more the thumbnails. So just for a minute, let me talk about thumbnails. So, and again, this is not criticizing anyone because we all want to get viewers. We all want to get people to pay attention to what we're talking about. But I do. I don't understand why you would want one device over the other. But the thumbnails, is this the remarkable killer? Is it the new distraction-free device? Uh, Truth is, no. Any device can be distraction-free. 100% agree with Kit and Voya and everyone who says that. But we all don't have that level of self-control, or quite frankly, in my case, I don't want the hassle of having to go through and figure out how many things to turn off before I can be able to focus on just what I want to do. Um, and I think that's where I can't remember if it was Kit or Voya or who, it may have been Jeffrey Moss, who said they really missed the boat by not having a focus mode where you could press one button and basically on the 10.3 go. And, I mean, that's where you can look at this thing here. I mean, they're trying to sell it as remarkable, 100%. They're not trying to sell it as Supernote. They're trying to go after that demographic. But what they missed, at least from all the demos I've seen, is a one button focus mode, turns off everything but the notebooks. And that's it. That would be kind of, and maybe the calendar, you basically strip it down to whatever Remarkable offers at their base. If they really wanted to be a direct competitor, that would be the perfect place to do this. And they did. Which means maybe, this is my cynical side coming out, but maybe what they're really trying to do is get more people in the Books ecosystem to realize that they can do more stuff on this tablet than what Remarkable allows you to do. And if that's the case, it's even more sad. So anyway, end of rant. Thank you all for being with me today. Are there any other questions about these devices, about what we've talked about? I'd be happy to stick out for a couple more minutes. I do want to get over and kind of catch Kit's live stream if I can. But seriously, thank you all for the support. Thank you for sticking with me and helping me monetize this channel. This has been a hobby, something that I really just didn't know I wanted to do till late last year, and then now I can't imagine not putting out content. So thanks, Max. Thank you so much. Thanks, Joe, for sticking in there with me to the end. You all enjoy the rest of your day, and to everyone else, I will see you later.